Vulpimancer. Go back to the first season of the original series and look at what Ben picks when he has no idea what he's tracking. He doesn't pick Heat Blast for firepower or Diamond Head for a shield wall. He picks Wildmutt, the orange-furred, eyeless beast that looks like a wolf crossed with a T-Rex. The reason is baked into the biology. Vulpimancers come from the planet Vulpin, which is a garbage planet. The world is a garbage planet, and Vulpimancers are blind, adapted to survive without sight. They shed eyes entirely and rebuilt their perception around smell and hearing so acute they can construct a full, real-time, three-dimensional map of their surroundings out of nothing but sound waves and scent particles. A Vulpimancer can track by scent and sound, even in total darkness or difficult environments. Wildmutt functioned as the team's tracker using his heightened senses. Wildmutt fights using superhuman strength and powerful jaws, guided by heightened senses. Here's where it gets more interesting. The eyeless design gives Vulpimancers powerful senses to survive in the garbage planet Vulpin. But Vulpimancer filled the tracker role in the original Omnitrix roster. Tetramand, 4 arms, is a towering red humanoid with 4 arms and 4 eyes, known for his physical power. He is one of the 10 aliens originally available in the Omnitrix. 4 arms specializes in close-range combat with superhuman strength. The original series leaned into that hard. 4 arms is named for his 4 arms and 4 eyes. Galvan. If the Tetramand solves problems by flexing raw physical dominance, 4 arms, impossible strength, the kind of alien that punches through concrete, the Galvan solves problems by being the smartest creature in the room while barely clearing 6 inches off the ground. These aren't two approaches to the same challenge. They're opposite philosophies of how to win a fight, and the Galvan wins by never being in a position where a fight is necessary in the first place. Galvans are a small, bipedal, frog-like species with a fragile, spindly build that makes any kind of physical confrontation a losing proposition before it even begins. What they lack in strength, they more than compensate for in processing power. Galvan intellect is the sharpest in the galaxy, renowned throughout the galaxy for their technological genius and advanced intellect. When Ben transforms into gray matter, he doesn't just get small. He gains the ability to understand, repair, and manipulate machinery so refined that even the most advanced human scientists can barely parse it. This isn't a side effect of the transformation, it's the entire point of it. The species debuted in Season 1, Episode 2, Washington BTC, early enough to establish that the Omnitrix wasn't just a weapon. It was a toolkit, and gray matter was the diagnostic instrument. Ben has used the form to repair advanced technology and infiltrate areas too small for his other forms. The size advantage isn't incidental. A 6-inch creature slips through ventilation shafts, crawl spaces, and cracks in infrastructure that no full-size being, not even a Florauna, can access. Gray matter is often chosen when technical problem-solving or infiltration is required. Gray matter is often treated with less enthusiasm by Ben compared to his more action-oriented forms. The very fact that he transforms into it anyway tells you something about the Omnitrix priorities versus his own. At times, the Omnitrix activates gray matter when technical skill is required, sometimes independent of Ben's intent. Ben doesn't choose it. The Omnitrix chooses it for him because the situation demands a mechanic more than it demands a fighter. That hardwiring becomes the decisive moment in the original series arc. In Ken 10, during the final confrontation with Kevin 11,000, it's the Galvan form's analytical ability that unlocks the Omnitrix's hidden master control. The sequence that turns the tide of the entire battle. What looks like a minor support alien turns out to be the species that holds the master key, and the fact that this only surfaces at the absolute end of the series tells you the writers knew exactly what they were doing with it from the start. The Galvan's real power isn't outsmarting enemies, it's understanding systems well enough to render them obedient. Kineceleran. Where the Tetramand fails because it can't move fast enough to keep up with its targets, the Kineceleran fails in exactly the opposite direction. It moves so fast that it essentially becomes its own kind of problem. A blur that outruns Ben's ability to think clearly about where he's going. Speed sounds like an unqualified advantage until you watch XLR8 ricochet through a city at 500 miles per hour and realize that half the time, nobody, including Ben, has any idea what just happened. XLR8 is one of the 10 original DNA samples stored in the Omnitrix, hailing from the planet Kinet. Early series lore established that he was the only Kineceleran on Earth because the planet's slow rotation would make any other member of his species physically ill, a detail that framed his appearance as something between a deliberate choice and a happy accident, rather than the start of an invasion. Visually, he reads as a semi-armored velociraptor, blue-skinned, 5 blue stripes running down the tail, black spherical structures mounted on his feet, and a helmet with a visor that keeps his expression permanently locked on. The speed is the defining trait, capable of manipulating friction to hit 500 miles per hour within 2 seconds of acceleration. Defenders of the form point out that 500 miles per hour is genuinely useful, and it is. XLR-8 can respond to emergencies anywhere on the North American continent in under 3 hours, can scout terrain faster than any other alien, can disarm bombs and de-escalate situations before a human observer even registers that something is wrong. These are all real, demonstrated capabilities, and they're not trivial. But they're also not the whole picture, because the friction manipulation that powers his acceleration also lets him run up vertical surfaces, make 90-degree turns at full speed, and stop on rapidly. The black spheres on his feet help generate friction, enabling his remarkable speed and agility. The real mechanism behind XLR-8 is simpler than any of his individual feats suggest. Ben's greatest recurring problem throughout the original series is that he shows up late. To fights, to disasters, to confrontations where his enemies have had a head start. The Omnitrix's response to that specific problem was an alien designed entirely around one question. What if Ben never had to be late again? Every part of XLR-8's design, the instant acceleration, the wall running, the ability to cover continental distances in a single afternoon, is focused on allowing Ben to arrive quickly at emergencies or confrontations. Lepidopterran, the supposed formula for Ben's transformations, gets blown apart the moment Stinkfly enters the field. Kinecelerans brag about speed, but Lepidopterrans break every expectation you had for an Omnitrix alien. It starts with the body, that spined beetle green exoskeleton with 4 bizarrely angled legs, arms with 3 clawed fingers each, 4 light green wings, black head, and those big 4 soft, movable eye stalks. And this is not Ben's most symmetrical look, but then you realize Lepidopterrans are built for chaos. Flight isn't just their feature, it's their whole strategy. Stinkfly's wings allow quick aerial maneuvers, tight dodges, and sudden climbs. It's not about cruising at altitude, it's about maximum agility. You see it every time Ben swerves around lasers, hovers to launch a surprise attack, or even airlifts friends from danger. And don't try to measure his lifting power, he's lifted considerable loads in flight. The muscles aren't just for show, his exoskeleton is tough and flexible for aerial tricks, but flexible enough for aerial tricks. It's easy to dismiss him as the flying one until you realize Stinkfly excels in both aerial and closed spaces. But flight is only the first rule Lepidopterrans shatter. Weapons, green slime spit from the mouth is his primary attack, used to immobilize foes in battle and buy crucial seconds. This isn't a one-trick spray. Stinkfly has dosed robots, disabled vehicles, and bought crucial seconds in battle just by varying the texture and spread. That's not hand-wavy science, that's a flashing neon sign that this species uses chemical warfare as casually as we sneeze. Every inch of the design screams adaptation, not elegance. Those legs are insect-like pincer legs suitable for perching. The claws are more for hanging, dodging, or quick grab attacks than brute force, though when needed. Yet while most of Ben's aliens are limited by their form, Lepidopterrans make a virtue of weirdness, bending around obstacles, slipping into vents, using flexible vision for situational awareness. Stinkfly's Omnitrix symbol is located between his eyes. You start to see the contradiction. Stinkfly isn't the bug one. He's the ultimate edge case, an answer to problems that shouldn't exist, yet always seem to in Ben's universe. He's a versatile and unpredictable alien in Ben's roster, with a solution that slips through the cracks of enemy plans. If the Kineceleran is a weaponized dragster, the Lepidopterran is a Swiss Army knife hurled out a window, bouncing off the impossible and surviving purely because rules never mattered in the first place. And that leaves the stubborn question hanging. If the Omnitrix can conjure up something this unpredictable, what actual limits, if any, does the device have? Nobody inside or outside the show ever quite answers why the form of alien utility needs to look like an escaped biology experiment, and maybe that's not a loophole. Maybe the answer is what makes Stinkfly so unsettling. The series never meant to guarantee order, just possibility. Mechamorph. But while Lepidopterrans feel bizarre and rare, Galvanic Mechamorphs are a technological species created from Galvan Prime's moon Galvan B. There isn't just one Mechamorph on the run. Ben's Omnitrix gives him regular access to upgrade a Galvanic Mechamorph from Galvan B, practically the next-door planet to Grey Matter's own Galvan Prime. And here's the part the average Earth scientist absolutely cannot believe. Mechamorphs are technological life forms accidentally created from the protoplasm by Galvan scientists on Galvan B. When you see upgrades seep into computers, spread through an engine block, or override a tank's controls by merging with the hardware, you're watching a living machine rewrite the hierarchy of physics. A mechamorph can reshape its body, hack almost any technology on contact, and regenerate after being torn in two, since every scrap is alive. Upgrade's sleek black body, silver lines twinkling like a neural grid, and that single green eye, it's not a mask, it's the interface. The Omnitrix logo sits on the chest, framed like a warning sign, as Upgrade morphs arms into blade-like tools or flattens into liquid metal streams. And the minute you start thinking of him as just a machine, he does something wild. His biomechanical nature means Ben gets to drag flesh and blood initiative into the digital world, turning mundane objects into living extensions, but the mechanisms behind that creation are exactly where the system nearly falls apart. Feral, incomplete, sometimes unable to interface with technology at all. It explains why a functional mechamorph can regrow after injury and heal like a biological creature. But it cannot explain the catastrophic breakdowns when something goes wrong in the chain. The paradox is that the Galvans, arguably the smartest species in Ben's universe, chose to manufacture life out of code and metal, but can't always guarantee it comes out safe or sane. Here's the textbook. The protoplasm is a perfect interface medium, and the helix, an infallible creator. If that were true, there would be no mechamorph aberrations, no broken upgrades lost between states. The mechamorphs sometimes show unpredictable abilities in classic Ben 10. You cannot legislate biology by ones and zeros without inviting chaos. The science puts up walls, but the world keeps climbing over them. For every episode that ends with a repaired circuit, there's an image stuck in your head of what that process must cost. The Omnitrix can forge a bridge between organic life and technology, maybe even rewrite what being alive means. But every galvanic mechamorph walks the line between miracle and malfunction. More than any other alien in Ben's roster, Upgrade is both a tool and a living alien with unique abilities. Ectonurite. Galvanic mechamorphs can rewrite tech and morph at will, but Ectonurite DNA grants ghost-like abilities, including intangibility, possession, and regeneration. When Zizaskair, Ectolord of the Ectonurites, burst out of Ben's Omnitrix, it wasn't just a jailbreak. It was a species-level escape, with the Ectonurite ruler suddenly free in a universe that relied on the Watch to contain its worst nightmares. What started as Ben's Ghost Freak transformation became the center of the action, because this particular alien was a dangerous entity seeking freedom and dominance. Ectonurites are native to Onarphados, a planet in the Anar system. They aren't just another ghost, they're the architects of an empire, inheritors of the genetic memory of every Ectonurite who ever lived. Their form is ghost-like with dark blue skin, sharp teeth and claws, exposed bones, and sinister skulls. Their bodies are made of protoplasm that can change density at will, letting them become intangible, walk through walls, vanish from sight, or turn solid when they need to inflict damage. Ectonurites regenerate their bodies if damaged, meaning the threat multiplies with any attempt at containment. Ectonurites can float and have no obvious need for lungs or oxygen. Possession is second nature. Ectonurites can possess sentient beings upon physical contact. They're not invincible, and their weakness is direct sunlight, which harms or destroys them. But the show doesn't treat this as a bug. It's a design choice that keeps Ectonurites from overrunning the living universe. Even before Ben unlocked Ghost Freak, the Omnitrix protected itself by stacking safeguards. Ghost Freak's DNA came with a containment shell that blocked sunlight. The Watch's creators didn't treat this as extra precaution, but as the baseline for dealing with a being whose DNA alone could reconstruct its entire race. Ectonurites aren't stopped by strength or firepower. Strength and firepower are ineffective against Ectonurites. Magic is one method that can harm them. In their first actual escape, Ghost Freak used Ben's own lack of control to break out of the Watch, forcing Gwen and Grandpa Max into a desperate fight for survival. Sunlight and magic were the main methods used by the Tennysons against Ghost Freak, and when Ben finally got Ghost Freak back into the Omnitrix, he knew he hadn't just beaten a monster. He'd faced a species with ambitions wider than planets, one capable of rewriting the terms of battle and even the rules of genetic containment. One line closes this section. Ectonurites do not fit as just another alien transformation. They are the one alien whose goal was to break free, whose DNA could possess its user, and whose existence inside the Watch required special containment. Their story is the proof. Ben transformed into Ghost Freak, but overcame the rogue Ectonurite's influence. Opticoid, the old escalation here isn't showy. We've gone from genetic predators to visionaries, but opticoids are proof that sensory overload is its own form of power. Isegai is an opticoid from Cytra, a planet known for creatures with many eyes. Opticoids are built to watch everything, everywhere, and Igai's form features many eyes across his upper body. An opticoid's upper body is studded with eyes clustered across the shoulders, arms, and even the chest, which holds one massive central eye capable of unleashing Igai's central chest eye can unleash powerful energy blasts. The chest eye isn't just for show, it's the core of opticoid combat. Every movement, every attack is guided by vision. Insect-like 360-degree awareness means that even if Isegai is surrounded, he's never caught off guard. Where most aliens fight blind spots, opticoids have none. Add enhanced superhearing, sharp enough to pick up distant threats or relay tactical information in the thick of action, and you get a creature whose role is reconnaissance, crowd control, and precision attack all at once. Strength and acrobatics round out the package, allowing Igai to move like a gymnast while tracking targets across multiple axes. Ordinary version. Most aliens can see and hear, but only from a fixed direction, only what their senses let them catch. Opticoids have no facial eyes. Instead, their upper body is covered in eyes with a mouth and prominent ears. Where humans blink in turn, opticoids scan and target. The assumption would be that such a species is indestructible, that covering every angle makes attack impossible. But Igai's vulnerabilities are wildly ordinary. Opticoids are vulnerable to blinding attacks. Hit him with a high-pitched sound and the super hearing collapses. For a transformation whose main advantage is sensory overload, being brought down by noise or dust is almost comedic, an alien whose greatest power is also its easiest weakness. Igai wasn't made for brute force or stealth. Opticoid's design enables tracking, analyzing, and battlefield awareness. Opticoid design enables broad awareness and targeting. Florauna. If Isegai's Cyclops head already pushed the Omnitrix transformations toward the genuinely bizarre, the next alien on the list abandons the last pretense that Ben is scanning anything resembling a person, because Florauna aren't animals at all. These are plant-based life forms from the planet Flor's Verdance. And when Ben transforms into Wildvine, the Omnitrix doesn't give him a creature with plant features grafted onto a standard body. It produces an organism that belongs to a completely different biological kingdom, a walking, talking, fighting plant. The device isn't mimicking fauna and adding leaves, it's replicating an entire branch of biology that doesn't even have a nervous system, somehow giving it one. The body plan makes that biological leap visible. 5 vine-like legs instead of 2, each tendril leg helps Wildvine move with a method that is distinct from a typical humanoid gait. 4 long, thin fingers on each hand, built for wrapping around branches, not for the kind of fine manipulation Ben's human hands are used to. A single eye, positioned in the middle of his face, is a unique trait of this species. His head is sheltered by flaps shaped like a Venus flytrap, a detail that belongs in a biology textbook and absolutely does not belong on a child superhero. Bulbs grow from his shoulders and back, producing seed pods Wildvine can launch as explosive projectiles or for smoke screens. Every part of this design says flora, not fauna, and the Omnitrix presents it without explanation or caveat. Nobody questioned any of this. The seed pod ability is one of the more tactically distinct tools in Ben's arsenal and deserves more attention than it usually gets. Wildvine can fire explosive pods as directed projectiles, they arc through the air and detonate on impact, or release them early as a cloud of thick smoke for crowd control and escape. It's an ability that can be used repeatedly without the need for visible ammunition. Wildvine often uses this ability in situations that require a more tactical or non-direct approach. This ability appears in multiple Wildvine episodes. Now you could argue this is just visual shorthand for a secondary character. Wildvine's voice is distinctive for its age, raspy quality, and his form recurs often enough through the series to become a recognizable part of the roster. What makes the Florauna slot genuinely notable is what it says about the Omnitrix's scanning logic. The device clearly doesn't just catalog Earth animals and slap a humanoid frame over them, it reaches across the full breadth of galactic biodiversity into kingdoms that lack faces and nervous systems, and somehow produces a being that can walk upright, form words, wear the Omnitrix on its wrist, and fight. The roster includes Galvan, showcasing intelligence in unexpected forms, and Florauna, a sentient plant-based being. In a roster full of magma men and crystalline warriors and a laser dog, Wildvine is the entry that proves the list goes deeper than anyone expected, that there's an entire kingdom of life in this universe, the device sampled, and it's sitting there in the 10th slot, covered in leaves, ready to throw a seed bomb. Gimlinopithecus. Where Florauna came from planets buried at the far edge of the known galaxy and represented a biological kingdom most of the show's characters had never encountered, Shocksquatch's species, Gimlinopithecus, is from the planet Pattersonea and appears as a large, Yeti-like alien. Gimlinopithecus are big, fur-covered, unmistakably primate-adjacent beings, and when Ben transforms into one of them, the Omnitrix delivers its closest thing to a Sasquatch with superpowers. The proximity is the point. This isn't a crystalline entity from a nebula or a gelatinous space amoeba. It's a hairy, massively built creature that moves like a person and could pass for a cryptid in the right lighting. The physical design is immediately readable and unsubtle in exactly the right way. Shocksquatch has yellow fur, a bulky build, blue electrical markings across his body, and can generate electricity through his hands. Shocksquatch's voice is also gravelly and energetic. It's a small detail that does heavy lifting, telling you everything about the species' temperament before the first punch is thrown. The moveset is simple and direct. Enhanced strength that lands in the same weight class as forearms, electrical discharge through hands or staff, and the natural durability that comes from being covered in thick fur from head to toe. He doesn't outmaneuver opponents when he overwhelms them, then electrocutes them, which is exactly what an electric Sasquatch should do. In his appearance, Shocksquatch generates electricity and uses his enhanced strength and fur-covered durability in combat. What the Gimlinopithecus slot reveals is that the Omnitrix operates on multiple, overlapping classification systems at the same time, not just one. The humanoid-aligned forms, forearms, heat blast, XLR8, follow a template where intelligence, tool use, and a recognizably upright posture are standard equipment. Gimlinopithecus breaks that template without breaking the roster's internal logic. It's unmistakably, undeniably non-human in posture and voice, and yet it's recognizably, undeniably primate. A species that evolved towards sentience through a lineage that doesn't branch from anything on Earth, but follows a similar evolutionary logic. The Omnitrix isn't cataloging creatures that look like people, it's cataloging creatures that converge toward people, that independently arrived at roughly the same body plan through completely different evolutionary pressure. Shocksquatch is proof that intelligence doesn't require a human shape, it just needs something big enough to hold the lightning. And enough fingers to swing a staff while it's holding it. Tokustar, Shocksquatch could level a city block, but this species can crack a moon in half. Way big, the Tokustar Ben transforms into stands nearly 100 feet tall, and every part of him is built like a warship. And for good reason, these aren't just big aliens, they're celestial beings whose biology operates on a scale no other species in the database comes close to matching. Tokustars are from the cosmos, deep space, not any mapped planet, and that's the core of what makes the species legendary in the Omnitrix database. They are praised for their massive size and strength as the largest species Ben can access. Here's where it gets specific. That means Azimuth, who designed the device and claimed to have mapped over 1 million species, personally flagged Tokustar as the kind of power that shouldn't be casually wielded. Defenders point out that Way Big appeared more than once, so the lockout can't be absolute. And strictly speaking, they're right. He did show up outside of life or death scenarios later on. But count the appearances across the entire original run. Way Big wasn't a regular rotation alien. He was the last resort, the end-of-the-line option, treated in the show's writing as something closer to a natural disaster Ben could wear than a standard transformation. The species was weaponized in the narrative by how rarely it was allowed to appear, not by how often. And that distinction tells you exactly how Azimuth rated them. What this proves about the Omnitrix as a category is that it was never just a superhero suit. Azimuth built it as a repository of species DNA with layered safety systems, and Tokustar is the clearest proof that those safety systems were engineered around power scaling, not just biological containment. The device doesn't unlock everything just because the user gains access to its full functions. Some things stay locked because the designer decided they were too dangerous to distribute full stop. Every other alien type in the roster operated under Ben's control once master control was active. The fact that Way Big didn't tells you the Omnitrix has a ceiling built into its design. Not a bug. A deliberate choice by a being who'd seen enough of the universe to know that handing out planet-reshaping power to a 10-year-old was probably a bad idea. Splixson, where Tokustar was power on a cosmic scale, this species is biological multiplication dressed up as a superpower. Ditto, Ben's Splixson form, looks like a small, somewhat goofy humanoid with pink skin, a large round head, and what appears to be a limited set of abilities on paper. He can split himself into duplicates. That's it. That's the power. But in practice, Ditto became one of the most ethically complicated transformations Ben ever used. And the reason has nothing to do with combat capability and everything to do with what the clones actually are. The species originates from Hathor, and the Hathorians are described as a generally peaceful population of farmers and painters. They're not warriors, not explorers, not a species that ever left their planet with conquest in mind. Splixons possess the power to clone themselves repeatedly as a biological trait. They don't share a collective consciousness. They share an appearance and a species designation, but each Ditto is as real and self-aware as the original. But that excitement curdles fast when the Vilgax drones start hunting the clones and the copies start dying. And this is a specific detail that reframes everything about the species. They aren't drones. They aren't extensions of his will. They're a crowd of individuals who happen to look identical, and he's been treating them like ammunition. The Omnitrix's limitation with Ditto was Ben's capacity to control and coordinate multiple clones. The limitation was Ben's own ability to coordinate consciousness across a swarm. The power ceiling wasn't the species. It was Ben's mind trying to operate multiple bodies at once, and eventually, the math of that breaks down no matter how advanced the Omnitrix interface gets. Ben found them and immediately saw an army. The species wasn't built for combat, and its real power, infinite multiplication of independent consciousness, is exactly the trait that makes it dangerous when someone tries to weaponize it without understanding what they're actually holding. What was happening the whole time was that the Omnitrix wasn't just giving Ben transformations, it was putting him in relationship with species, and some of those relationships required him to grow into the responsibility of wielding them. The infinite cloning ability wasn't the point. The 10,000 Dittos were never about making Ben stronger. They were about showing him that power without personhood, treating living beings as extensions of your own will, is the same logic Vilgax uses, and it destroys everything it touches. Vaxasaurian. Splixson multiplies to cover small ground. Vaxasaurian is a humanoid dinosaur-like species native to Terradino. The Vaxasaurian hails from Terradino, and it is the point in the Omnitrix lineup where subtlety officially ends. At baseline, the transformation produces a hulking humanoid, beige dinosaur-like skin, large and muscular build, with a pronounced jaw and tail. The species is known for its immense strength and ability to change size, depending on the situation. A Vaxasaurian at maximum size doesn't punch through walls, it punches through what walls represent. Bridge supports, fortress foundations, mountain passes, structural assumptions. The difference between a locked door and a Vaxasaurian at full height is the difference between a locked door and a freight train. Ben used this alien when facing opponents requiring great strength and size. The range is the whole point. A Vaxasaurian's presence can alter the environment during combat. The transformation is often used to deal with massive obstacles requiring strength and size to overcome. The speed criticism follows naturally. Even at their heaviest, Vaxasaurians don't outrun the fast aliens. XLR8 can zip circles around one at full growth, Heat Blast can keep distance indefinitely, but the speedsters can only maintain that advantage until there's something in their way that only a Vaxasaurian could have placed there. Ben relies on the size-shifting ability for short bursts to resolve obstacles. The species doesn't have to dominate the engagement, it has to alter the geometry of it permanently before anyone else can react. And the practical reality extends further than anyone expected. A Vaxasaurian at maximum growth doesn't just lift things, it changes what lift means. The floor beneath him becomes the variable. When enlarged, Vaxasaurian can impact structures heavily due to its mass. It redistributes. Critics will note the transformation has a glaring vulnerability in its ramp-up time. That the gap between 7 feet and 60 is a window where he's big enough to be a target and slow enough to be a sitting one. That the collateral damage of appearing at maximum height in a populated area would be catastrophic. Those aren't wrong. They're also beside the point. Ben can adapt the form to solve physical challenges that require strength or mass. This alien allows Ben to manipulate the environment through sheer strength and size. Arburian Pelarota. Where Vaxasaurian grows larger to affect everything around it, Cannonbolt reveals that the rule, you need limbs, orientation, a front and back to be a viable combatant, was never real. Cannonbolt is an Arburian Pelarota from Arburia fighting by curling into a ball and launching himself with great speed. His entire design is an argument for becoming the projectile. The Arburian Pelarota's body is covered in natural yellow exoplates, and its signature move is curling into a ball. When Cannonbolt rolls at speed, obstacles and enemies are often knocked aside or broken due to his armored momentum. The Omnitrix granted Ben this form when he needed an alien capable of powerful impacts. The species name references its ball-like rolling ability and its origin from Arburia. The backstory earns the weight of every spin. Arburia was once a peaceful planet home to the Arburian Pelarota. They develop it because something was hunting them across their own planet. And the only response their bodies could evolve was becoming an unstoppable ricochet. The Arburian Pelarota evolved their unique defensive traits for survival. The fact that extinction arrived anyway, that Arburia is rubble regardless, is the kind of quiet tragedy the classic series embeds in aliens that get 3 minutes of screen time before the next transformation activates. The sheer utility compounds the loss. Cannonbolt's rolling form allows him to travel quickly and be launched across distances others cannot traverse as fast. He doesn't just survive impact, he is the impact. Cannonbolt's transformation combines powerful defense with offensive capability. When Cannonbolt rolls, he is difficult to stop and functions as a living cannonball. That is the small version of the problem. The large version is that the Arburian Pelarota's entire species design, the armor, the spherical form, the high-velocity rolling, works precisely because it discards every assumption about what a fighting form should look like. No limbs to grab, no face to aim with, no upright posture to maintain balance, just a sphere, an instinct, and enough mass behind both to make the obstacle reconsider its existence. Skeptics say it directly. You can't aim, you can't stop mid-roll, you hit whatever's in front of you and hope it was worth the trip. Fair enough in theory. Cannonbolt can steer and control his trajectory while rolling. The Arburian Pelarota's rolling form enables steering even at high speeds. The sphere form defines the Arburian Pelarota's combat style. Nanomech, where Cannonbolt is mass redirected with surgical intent, Nanomech is the opposite kind of creature, an accident that learned how to fight. He's not an alien Ben discovered on a world. He's an alien synthesized from nanotech that was already inside a person. Victor Validus, who had alien nanochips in his body, provided the genetic material when the Omnitrix scanned those chips during the events of Ben 10, Alien Swarm. The result was a transformation that didn't previously exist in the Omnitrix database, a being with no homeworld, no species history, no natural origin story, half human, half nanochip, roughly an inch tall at full size, gray skin mapped with a green circuit-like design, one large cyclopean green eye, a carbon silicon alloy body that glows when he flies, green wings that flare bright green midair, and the Omnitrix symbol on his chest. He was assembled, not recruited. His scale redefines what a transformation can and can't do. At microscopic size, Nanomech can enter spaces nothing else in Ben's arsenal can access. Inside machines, inside walls, inside the circuitry of a device that needs disabling from the inside before it can be destroyed from the outside. He can shrink further at will, slipping through ventilation, but he cannot grow past his original 1-inch frame. Every opponent he faces is by default thousands of times larger than he is, which means every threat is existential in a way that doesn't apply to Diamond Head or Four Arms. The show demonstrated the practical cost of that gap when a fly swatter actually harmed him. Not nearly harmed, genuinely harmed, presented without commentary, as if a transformation capable of discharging bioelectrical energy from both hands and a single eye should obviously still be vulnerable to household pest control. He can be mistaken for a bug and eaten. His voice shifts with the scale of his audience. To human-sized beings, he speaks in a register so high it verges on subvocal, a buzz rather than a word. To creatures his own size, the voice drops to something deep and resonant, as if the physics of the acoustic environment determines which end of his range is available. The adaptive combat trait is what separates him from the rest of the lineup on a fundamental level. Nanomech can adapt to his opponents very effectively, reconfiguring his bioelectrical discharge from his hands and eye depending on what the situation demands. He doesn't have a fixed combat profile the way Heat Blast has fire or Diamond Head has crystal. He reads the threat, reorganizes his own biology, and answers with whatever shape the energy takes. The nanotech origin explains the capability, but doesn't make it less unsettling in practice. This is a being whose entire body is a modular response system, and Ben can flip between that and a 60-foot siege engine in the same transformation sequence. The design shift across the series' timeline matters more than most alien forms because Nanomech's visual language is essentially a history of the Omnitrix interface itself. In his original Alien Swarm appearance, he carried that single large green eye, the gray skin, the circuit patterning, the silhouette of a creature assembled from electronics. Then Omniverse reimagined him with 4 small eyes arrayed across his face, a full-body bright green luminescence replacing the circuited design with something closer to his alien source's aesthetic, and the Omnitrix symbol relocated from his chest to between his eyes. The changes look cosmetic. They aren't. They track a being that was never designed for a body, was given one by accident, and spent 3 series iterations being redrawn by a watch that kept updating its own understanding of what he should have been all along. A 1-inch tall alien discharging enough bioelectric energy to disable a chip-based weapon is, when you pause to look at it directly, a person holding a nuclear reactor the size of a penny. The entire transformation is a walking paradox. An intelligence Ben can control sitting inside a body that could be crushed under a textbook and a discharge output that could disable a city block's worth of hardware from the inside out. The version of Ben who unlocked this form was being hunted by a nanochip army that could take over his mind from the inside. Nanomech is the weapon designed to fight something that lives in the same space he does. The answer to an invasion that bypassed walls, skin, and every conventional line of defense. He exists because the threat was already inside. You can steelman the skepticism easily. A 1-inch alien with no real offensive reach against anything larger than a microchip, a single eye, no flight endurance, and a body that a housefly could theoretically injure. How is this transformation anything but an emergency utility slot? How does this earn its place alongside 4 arms, Heat Blast, and Diamond Head? But the answer is equally hard. Every other form on the Omnitrix solves problems at Ben's scale. Nanomech solves problems that are physically inaccessible to anything at Ben's scale. You can't tell 4 arms to slip inside a processor and manually untangle a Vilgax nanotech army from the wiring. You can't ask Heat Blast to burn out a virus propagating through a circuit board without melting the board itself. Nanomech fits the gap that the rest of the roster creates by design. He's the smallest form because he operates in the space the others cannot reach, and his true role is visible when he's deployed against threats other forms cannot reach. The Omnitrix was built for a galactic traveler, but it carried an alien for one specific reason. Some threats don't exist at a size the galaxy usually notices.